A house is just a house, but a home is a place that you share with the people you love. A homemaker has so many roles, and one of those roles can sometimes be hostess. This week we had company back to back. We have pretty much had people at our house all week, and it's been so much fun. I thought I would take you through a day of feeding our company wonderful foods from scratch. We just had some friends come into town. I didn't have time to run to the store, so last night as I was going to bed, I made an order on Walmart for groceries to be delivered to my door. Just some few things that I felt like we needed to restock the fridge with, some fresh vegetables, and I am making some granola this morning. I thought we would have some granola. I have a huge bin of homemade yogurt that I made last weekend, and I would whip up some smoothies with that yogurt as well. And so it's just a really quick, but also kind of a light breakfast as well. My recipe for granola takes 4 cups of either quick oats or rolled oats. I'm doing a little bit more than that, which is a good thing because there's so many people in the house today. So my recipe is 4 cups of oats, a half a cup of melted coconut oil, and a half a cup of melted honey. And then I've also added some cinnamon and nutmeg and a half a cup of flaked coconut. I love these raw, large flakes of coconut. And also some raw walnuts, and I like to sprinkle a little bit of salt in there. It helps to balance out the sweetness. When it comes to granola, think of baking all of the raw ingredients first, and then after it's done baking, you add any chocolates or fruits to the rest of your granola. So I'm putting it all here on a sheet pan and spreading that out into a pretty even layer, and then I'm going to bake it at 350 degrees for 20 minutes, and I like to give it a stir in between that 20 minutes as well. I've said it before here on the channel, but bread really is life, and so I'm just getting some sourdough starter fed. I'm going to be doing a little bit of baking, not in today's video, but just keeping that going. I know that maybe not everybody in this audience eats a lot of bread, especially if maybe you're just living alone, or maybe it's just you and your spouse. But when there's lots of kids around and there's lots of people around, bread is an essential part of the kitchen, and just being able to make sandwiches and French toast and just filling in all of the meals and nicks and crannies. If you want to know what some of my favorite bread recipes are, you can go back and watch my baking marathon video that I made not too long ago, and it's actually in my summertime playlist that I'll put down in the description box below. I'm also using our frozen peaches that we made together in last week's video when we preserved lots and lots of peaches in lots of different ways. So for our fruit smoothie today, it's quite a bit of peaches and blueberries and homemade yogurt. And I just had some black cherry cranberry juice in the fridge that I'm adding to that for some sweetness. That's the only sweetness that I added to this, other than a couple of bananas. This is a big batch smoothie because there's lots of little kids in the house. So now that the granola is golden on top, I'm pulling that out, and I'm adding some white chocolate chips. I like to add, if I'm going to be adding chocolate chips at all, I like to add it right when the granola comes out of the oven, because it just melts that chocolate right into it and really adheres to the granola. And now I'm adding some raisins as well that I got from Azure Standard. And after I've let this sit for about 5 minutes, it's cooled just a little bit, I'm mixing it all together. And I like to serve my granola over yogurt, maybe drizzling a little bit of honey on there. My kids love to eat it just like cereal and have it in a bowl with milk. It's also something that we often put in a Ziploc bag and eat with nuts, and it's just like a little trail mix to go and a snack throughout the day. So now I'm just making some bread rolls ahead of time. This is my favorite bread roll recipe of all time. I use it every holiday season and for cinnamon rolls and dinner rolls and all the in-betweens. Today we're going to be making them into some garlic breadsticks to go along with our pasta night. So getting this ready, it rises first for 1 hour and then you shape it and then it rises for second hour. So just make sure that you have a good 2.5 hours prior to when you want to be eating these rolls. When it comes to feeding a large crowd, some of my favorite things to make are soups and pastas and tacos, burritos, putting in a large roast and serving it with a lot of potatoes. So tonight we will be having some spaghetti with my homemade spaghetti sauce and a bunch of pasta because I have so many children in the house and that is always a win when it comes to kids. And I thought I would just fill in the rest of their bellies with garlic breadsticks as well. We got a really late start to breakfast this morning. It was more of a brunch. And so all the kids are off playing games together. And I'm just in here in the kitchen with my friend. And I decided that we would just put together some appetizers for a lunch. There are very few things that I actually like to mix up from a packet. But this is from Primal Palette. And it's an all natural Whole Foods brand, and so there's no preservatives or anything in this packet for ranch. So I'm just mixing this up with some sour cream, and we're going to serve it with a load of vegetables. And I am saving all of these veggie scraps, and I'm just going to throw them right into my Instapot while I'm thinking about it and start some vegetable broth and just put that in the freezer when it's all done. I love it when I do things right away when it's coming across my mind. And I always am so grateful later when I'm putting together a soup or something and I need a broth. I just pull that out of the freezer and thaw it out and throw it in. One of my favorite appetizers that we've been enjoying all summer is having cream cheese with a pepper jelly on top. This is a homemade pepper jelly that we put together with peppers from last summer, and we're still enjoying it. And I'll need to be making some more of that with all the peppers we still have because I have loved pulling that out whenever guests come into town. So that's perfect. Just putting a spread out on the table for hungry kiddos and guests to walk by and grab a snack. And that will hold them out until dinner. Our bread dough has been sitting here on the counter for 1 hour and it's ready to shape, ready to go. I used to stress so much more about having company over. I would feel so much pressure to have the house perfectly clean and have the meals all perfectly planned. I wouldn't say that I don't still feel the pressure to have everything tidy and clean. I love it when the home is clean, a candle is lit, and I just am in the mood for hosting and making wonderful foods for people. I just enjoy it so much more now that I feel that I'm just a little bit more seasoned of a homemaker. I remember the first couple of times I actually invited somebody over for dinner and just thinking about how my mother went through those processes and remembering the example that she set for me and thinking, okay, this is what my mom did. She would invite somebody over for dinner and this is what she would make, and really trying to follow in those footsteps. But I also remember making some real blunders when it comes to cooking for other people. But as a young mother, there was also times where we have lived out in the country, far, far away from lots of people. And I put my hand to cooking in the kitchen and practicing. I would make soups and all sorts of things and put them in the freezer. And then there were times that somebody needed to stop in for dinner because there was nowhere to get dinner in this little small town. And so my husband would bring them in to the home and I would pull out a lentil soup from the freezer. I would have some fresh bread made and we would just practice that hosting and cooking for others. And having small experiences like that helped me gain confidence in myself and in my cooking abilities. And I realized how much joy it brought to me to make something up in the kitchen or prepare a beautiful space for them to stay. How much joy it brought me to give that gift to somebody else. So much of what we practice in our home as homemakers can be such a beautiful gift to give to someone who's visiting your home. So I've mixed together about 1/4 cup of melted butter, and I've put some garlic powder and some Italian seasoning and some salt in a little jar, and I'm just painting that onto these breadsticks just to add some garlic herb flavor. What I love about this bread roll recipe is it's always light and fluffy and soft and slightly sweet. So the plan is to put these in the oven at 400 degrees and bake them until they're just golden on top. I wasn't quite sure with these twisted breadsticks how long they were going to take. I think they were closer to 15 or 20 minutes. When it's my typical bread rolls, or maybe in the shape of a croissant, it takes closer to 9 to 12 minutes. So just depends on the shape of the roll. And I'm also putting a bunch of fresh red tomatoes into our red pasta sauce and trying to use as many of these garden fresh tomatoes as possible. And that's typically something that I only do in the summertime. My original thought was to put some Parmesan or mozzarella on these breadsticks, and I just simply forgot to do that when I first put them in. So once they got a little bit golden, then I put some mozzarella on top just to make them more like buttery, cheesy breadsticks. And I knew that the kids would really enjoy that. So I'm just putting them back into the oven for a couple more minutes just to get that cheese a little melty and a little golden on top. So I am a sucker for just traditional red spaghetti sauce. I love it with meat and vegetables and tons of garlic. And it usually starts out with sauteing the hamburger. I'm doing 2 pounds for our large group. I'm dicing a whole white onion and chopping up a lot of garlic. I probably put 6 to 8 cloves of minced garlic into the sauce. I'm just a garlic girl, I guess. And for our summer pasta sauce, I'm adding a whole bowl of fresh tomatoes. You could think of this as maybe 2 cans of crushed tomatoes or diced tomatoes. And I'm also putting in some diced celery. I think it adds a great flavor. And I usually shred some carrots in this, and I simply just forgot to put the carrots in, but that just brings some sweetness to the sauce. And now I'm going to add 2 cans of regular tomato sauce and 1 jar of crushed tomatoes, just to make it a little bit juicier and saucier and make it go further. It's kind of hard to give you guys an exact recipe because I really just eyeball all of this, but I definitely salt it to taste. And I feel when it comes to a red pasta sauce, the balance between the salt and the sweet is really important. And I'm also dumping in a load of Italian seasoning here, and I also have some fresh basil that I'll be putting in just at the end. And I put in probably 1/4 a cup to 1/3 a cup of sugar. And I'm just going to put the lid on this and let it simmer for about an hour. And that is the key to getting that rich, wonderful flavor. And then, of course, I always taste it to see if it needs a little bit more salt or a little bit more sugar. These twisted breadsticks are going to be so good for dipping into that red sauce and soaking up all the flavor. It's going to be so fun. I had a load of fresh peaches that needed to be used in the fridge. They had spots on them and bruises, and so we just cut all the bad parts off and threw them into a peach cobbler. So that's what we're having for dessert, with some homemade ice cream and fresh whipped cream. Everything is done for dinner, so we put it on the kitchen island and everybody just dug in. I enjoyed the extra help sitting around the kitchen island chopping peaches with my friend and just bonding and getting to know each other better over preparing delicious food for our families. Even though this is a blue ribbon container, we actually did make our favorite cheesecake blackberry ice cream that we made last year, and we absolutely love it. We make it out of our fresh, raw cow's milk that we get from the Amish. As the hostess, I have learned to just relax into the role of hosting and enjoy the process of good food and laughter and bonding time with the people in your home. It doesn't really matter how perfect it is or how much you're able to accomplish. It matters how you're doing it and how much love you're putting into it. And people will remember how they felt in your home. They don't always remember what you made or what you're doing, but they remember the feeling that they had in your home. And that really is the best part. So thanks so much for joining me here today. And I will catch you guys next week. Remember, recipes are in the description box below. And make sure to say hello. And I'll catch you next time. Love you lots.